I am talking today with Mindaugas Mauragis, who has built a piece of Lithuania in Canberra, Australia. This is Trakai Castle, a copy of the most famous castle in Lithuania. So how did you manage to build this, and how did you decide to do it?
Well, it's all started by me taking the grandkids down to Cockington Green to have a look at the English little township. But being there, we came across part of it where they had an exhibition of all various, from different countries, either buildings or castles or whatever the case might be. And the idea came to me, seeing you had a German castle there, you had Czechoslovakian and so, why can't we have a Lithuanian one? Well, once that idea got into my mind, I brought it into the Scouts and we discussed it and we said, well, let's give it a go.
With the Lithuanian Scouts, which were like separate from General Boy Scouts?
From the Australia, there were Lithuanian Scouts, and we agreed financing it. Well, that was the main part. Then once we agreed upon it, we then went to Cockington Green and discussed it with them whether we could build it there. And we showed them photos of what we intended doing. They thought it was a great idea, and they said they could build it, but it would take 5 years before they could even start it. But they said, if you want to, you can have a go yourself. So I thought, yeah, well, why not? So that's how it started. Members from the scouting group, they actually got in touch with Lithuania and got photos from the actual castle museum. They ended up with architectural drawings of the place. And from that, I ended up building it. And of course, my idea was to build a nice small castle. But Cockington had a different idea. They wanted a large one, and it was basically the scale was 1:50, which is quite large. Once we agreed upon it and everything else, the question came upon what materials do I use? How will the materials stand up to the weather in Canberra, where you had winds, hot summers, cold winters, frost, even snow? Well, that was the biggest problem. And I used to trial a few items here and there and see how they sort of stood up to the weather. In a way, I was lucky. Before the castle started collapsing, 22 years had gone by.
So how long it took to create the castle, and did you do it all by yourself?
I basically did the building myself, and it took 3 years to do it. It was finished in 2003.
Currently it's undergoing renovation, I think, so hopefully it will be put back.
Yes, it has to be renovated. It was starting to see better days, and apparently they picked it up to move it for renovating, and things started collapsing. That is what I heard.
So Mindaugas, like most of the Lithuanian Australians, is part of the so-called DP generation, displaced persons generation, who were forced to leave Lithuania by the Soviet occupation in 1944. Then they spent some years in the DP or refugee camps in Western Europe, and eventually they were accepted by various countries, among them Australia, which accepted Lithuanian DPs in return for 2 years of labor for the government, where the government would send them. So how were these first years in Australia for your family?
I think it was very hard on my parents, because my father, he was sent to the railways to work there. Now, my father had a doctorate in law, and he was not used to hard labour. And he actually had to even build our first house in Picnic Point, Sydney. When we arrived, I think would have been within the year, he started He ended up buying a block of land and started building a house. And he built it himself.
And it was like even coming to Australia was quite a long process. It was a month from Europe by ship to Fremantle, then to Sydney, a week, and then you were moved to a camp in Bathurst where you had to live for some time, yes?
Yeah, the whole process, we left Naples, and I remember stopping at Aden and Calcutta somewhere and a few places along the way. We ended up in Fremantle and we ended up in Sydney. The whole trip would have taken a good month, if not more. We arrived in Sydney in June 49. We arrived in the evening. We ended up going straight to a train that took us up to Bathurst, where, as a matter of fact, I can't quite remember how we got to the campsite, but I think it must have been bused, using buses. And
so the camp was like...
it was just an army barracks. We went into there and it was very cold. That's one thing I remember. It was extremely cold because being winter, and Bathurst is a cold place anyway. In the morning, I remember getting out and you had rabbits everywhere. You'd walk along and you had rabbits going from under your feet. We would have been there for a month, maybe 2 at the most, and then we were bussed over to Greta, where we lived there until such time as we moved into Sydney.
So, as you mentioned, your father managed to build his own home in Sydney. So how much time it took between the immigration and acceptance into Australia and when your family already had your own home here?
I think we moved into the house about 1952, early 52, I think.
So then it would be, as you came here not immediately after the Second World War, but in 1949, yes? So it would be
49 we arrived.
Yeah, so just 3 years. It's quite impressive. And actually, we are sitting in this location, and behind us is Snowy Hydro project, which was also in large part built by people who immigrated to Australia at the time, many of them refugees, Lithuanian refugees as well. And it is impressive for us how quickly all these Lithuanians built their new lives here, but also that they didn't forget their roots, and they created many pieces of Lithuania, such as the Trakai Castle in Canberra, but also many Lithuanian halls all over the major Australian cities. Other Lithuanian monuments, including in Canberra, we have visited Eglė Žalčių Karalienė monument, which is built according to Lithuanian legends, and so on. Because the DP generation always felt that they were not really immigrants, but people who were exiled. They would have never left Lithuania if not for the Soviet occupation. And after leaving that country, they still try to create their own piece of Lithuania here. So it's very interesting to meet people like Mindaugas who represent that generation and who have themselves built in their lives these pieces of Lithuania so far from the original country. Thank you.
Pleasure.